I worked with a baseball program 2 years ago that had tried to fundraise on their own, and they had about 40 athletes at the time, and it took them about a month, but they went out and they did what they could to raise some money, and they raised $9,000 in about a month's time. And I met the coach at a baseball clinic here locally in Denver, and we got to talking. And he said, "Please help me. I need help. I need to understand how this actually works. I'm an expert at coaching baseball. I'm not somebody who goes out and fundraises for a living." And so we partnered up, and same amount of kids, about 40 kids. The following spring, which was spring of 2025, we did what we call a donation-based fundraiser. So that's where the athletes are asking for support via donation rather than selling a product. And in the first hour, we made $11,000. And in 7 days, we'd made over $25,000. So as you can imagine, the kids were obviously very excited. They had a great season. They were able to travel, which they wouldn't have been able to do without that money. And of course, the coach said, "Sign me up for next year."
Hello and welcome to the Tracer Franchising Podcast, where we interview great franchisors and franchisees. And today we actually have a little bit of both, I guess, with Lindsay DiDonna of Fundraising University. I'll let you explain it, Lindsay, but for those listening, you'll be able to hear someone who's lived on both sides of the equation. So it's a really cool perspective. Uh, Lindsay, welcome. Let's just start off with a little bit about you and your how you got started in fundraising. You.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. So I'm actually based out of Denver, Colorado. I'm about 25 minutes south of downtown Denver. I am a franchisee within the brand. I have a unit that I own and operate, and then I also oversee multiple units within the state of Colorado that we do not have occupied with franchisees as of yet. So in some regard, it's what you would consider part of our corporate program where we might have sales reps come in and out of those territories. It's more or less training grounds for other members of the brand. And I'm also what you would call a franchise business coach. So as we onboard new franchisees, I am one of the individuals that works to train and support the new franchisee as they get started in their business. I've been involved in the business really in some form or fashion since we incepted in 2009. Uniquely enough, my brother-in-law, Mike Bahoon, is the founder of the business. So I was actually with Fundraising University prior to us being a franchisor, more when we were regionally based out of the Midwest. And as we have grown through the years, I've assisted in a multitude of different roles, even somewhat of the franchise development role up to about the end of 2025. But through that time, I have essentially always been operable within a territory. So I've been what you would consider a sales rep slash franchise owner. And I have sales reps myself in my territories here in Colorado.
Okay, very cool. And so, could you, since you were there, at the beginning, tell us a little bit about what the franchise does and just how? I mean, how did it even start? Right, like where did this idea come from?
Yeah. So my brother-in-law years ago, he had a background playing baseball. He played in college, played a little bit professionally. And as he kind of essentially retired, if you will, out of that, he was coaching high school baseball at the time. And he was introduced to fundraising from a gentleman that had approached him about his high school baseball program. They needed money, they needed a way to make the money. And so as he was experienced in this process, he said, "Oh, I'd love to get into this." And so he started working in fundraising himself. He was with another company that is no longer operable today. But essentially what had happened was he was with the company for quite a few years. It was more of a commission-based role. And he and my sister at the time had moved from Kansas to Arizona and had just found out that they were pregnant with twins when my brother-in-law received the call that the company he was working for was, financially insolvent and more or less filing for bankruptcy and going under. And hey, the money that we owe you type of thing, we're not going to be able to pay you. And
Wow.
so obviously a bit of a shock considering my sister had just found out she was pregnant with twins. And they knew it was more or less going to be a bit of a complicated pregnancy. So he went into kind of emergency mode and said, "Well, I'm going to create my own fundraising business." And so that's what he did. So hence in 2009, how Fundraising University was born. And we've just grown through the years. Like I said, we initially started out more of a regional operation. We had sales reps in various states, more Midwest based. And then in 2001, he was approached and essentially asked, had he ever thought about franchising? He hadn't. He had taken some time to get a higher level of education in franchising and financials and, really just increasing his business acumen. And that's when he began the franchising route. So he invested significantly in doing that in 2021. And so, we became full time franchised at that point in time. So we're still very young in terms of the franchise world. But our business, this is our, 15th year in business. So we obviously have been doing a lot of fundraising for many years.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's played high school sports knows how important fundraising is, and everything's just gotten more expensive. Even back then, it was expensive, and I remember doing the car washes and trying to sell the little coupon books to friends of families and stuff like that. So, what's is that similar to what you guys do? Like, how does it actually work? How do you help schools do things that they couldn't do on their own?
Sure. So we are what we would consider a service based business. We're not a product based business. What we do is we focus primarily on youth athletic and activities fundraising. So, for example, as you mentioned, Josh, like your local high school sports team, a football team, or a cheer squad, or a band or a performing arts department. Those programs, especially within like a public school realm, they don't have enough money to go around. Every single program needs something. You think about a baseball program having to turf their field, or all of the uniforms that you'd have to buy for a 150-man football program, or all of the instruments that you have to replace however many years within a band program. The cost is extreme. The costs are continuously going up, and schools just don't have the ability to keep up financially, nor do they have the acumen uh, and or the experience to know how to fundraise efficiently and effectively. So our area of focus is on that youth athletic and activities program. We essentially come in and we are experts at fundraising. So do we use some products in our fundraising? Yes. Meaning that kids and athletes can sell products like coffee or cookie dough or popcorn, or those discount products like you'd mentioned, the coupon books, things of that nature. Yes, we do partake in those. But really where our secret sauce is we know how to work with the coaching staff to teach them very specific dynamics that need to go into a fundraiser, like organization and urgency and accountability and expectations, so that when they run a fundraiser with us, we're able to make a significant amount of money in about 7 days, where we can, in most cases, cover an entire team's yearly budget within that 7 day time frame by
Holy cow!
utilizing the types of fundraisers that we execute.
Wow, that's amazing. I think any school would love if I could know that I wouldn't have to for the entire soccer season be like trying to peddle popcorn on the weekends.
Right.
That'd be amazing. So do y'all I guess I've heard, because I've talked about this with other clients. And they said, well, it seems weird, making money off of like fundraising, which I think is kind of crazy. I think, but the biggest indicator that this is a useful and helpful thing is I would say if schools come back. So you've owned this for a long time. Do you have repeat clients? Like how long do they stay with you for?
Yeah, my residual rate is actually over 90%.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
you know, truly, and I'll give you an example. I worked with a baseball program 2 years ago that had tried to fundraise on their own, and they had about 40 athletes at the time, and it took them about a month, but they went out and they did what they could to raise some money, and they raised $9,000 in about a month's time. And I met the coach at a baseball clinic here locally in Denver, and we got to talking. And he said, "Please help me. I need help. I need to understand how this actually works. I'm an expert at coaching baseball. I'm not somebody who goes out and fundraises for a living." And so we partnered up, and same amount of kids, about 40 kids. The following spring, which was spring of 2025, we did what we call a donation based fundraiser. So that's where the athletes are asking for support via donation rather than selling a product. And in the first hour, we made $11,000. And in 7 days, we'd made over $25,000. So as you can imagine, the kids were obviously very excited. They had a great season. They were able to travel, which they wouldn't have been able to do without that money. And of course, the coach said, sign me up for next year. So we ran another successful fundraiser this very beginning of March 2026, and he made more money this year than he made last year. So the residual rate can be extremely high as long as you follow the process that we outlay for you. It's all about generating that relationship, developing the relationship, and getting results. And then, of course, the residual rate speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is if your customers are happy, they're going to keep coming back. So they find value in what you do for them. Okay, very cool. I think that answers that question pretty well. Can you talk about how the franchise has grown? So it's been 5 years. How many franchisees do you guys have? And just kind of how you seen the internal support and systems grow?
Yeah, so we have over 30 franchisees at this point. We have actually
Nice.
grown internally quite a bit. We have over a handful of franchisees who started out as single unit owners that are now multi-unit owners. So we're extremely proud of that, which creates a whole new dynamic. Now there's multiple territories with one owner, and so we're teaching individuals how to go out and recruit and find sales reps to put in those territories. So that's probably been our biggest undertaking, if you will, in the past 6 months to a year. We also are excited to introduce that we have a proprietary software that we are now introducing as what we call Box Score. So it's an internal software that is owned 100% by Fundraising University, and it does everything from maintain our credit card processors for our fundraisers as franchisees. We can manage our CRM, our compliance, um, our financials, you name it. We can do everything within this software. And so we have spent about the last 2.5 years developing this. And it is completely functional for us now, even so much so that I have 110% visibility into what is going on with each of my fundraisers. And I
Mm,
can also provide that visibility to the team as well. So they can see as coaches exactly what's happening with each athlete live as we move throughout the 7 day process, which I personally feel as a franchisee has significantly contributed to the success that we've seen on average per athlete because we have real live data to work with. So we're growing. I would say we're growing extremely responsibly. But, again, we are new to franchising. We are new to, onboarding individuals into the business. And so there's always ebbs and flows with that, finding the right people. What's the cadence of training and support? But, we've seen some great success. We have a handful of owners that have reached over $1 million in total gross sales their first year. So
wow.
we're extremely impressed with that.
Yeah, that is amazing. And right now in my franchise, I think we have like 3 or 4 softwares that we're kind of like shoestringing together. And I would happily just take all that money and pay the franchisor if they could give me something that was all in one.
That's right. That's right.
I would be like, I'd pay more money because of all the time that it takes for me to do this. So,
Mhm.
that's amazing that you guys put that together. Um, okay, and then what about you are an FBC, right? You're kind of onboarding a franchise business coach, helping with these new owners grow. So you really know what are the skills that an owner needs to be successful at this business.
I would say number one, you have to be a self-starter, right? When you move into the world of business ownership, regardless, you've got to be a self-starter. You absolutely have to be a self-starter with this because we don't have a brick and mortar that we go to every day. This isn't a gym. This isn't a food prep kitchen or um, a blowout salon. We literally are visiting schools every single day, where we're walking onto school campuses and we're identifying who the head coaches of these specific teams are, and we're walking up to them and introducing ourselves to them. So you really have to be a self starter, and with that, and I would say equally as important, you need to be extremely organized. You've got to have a plan of how you're going to execute your week. And then the self starter element comes in where you're actually executing on your week. So, organization, being a self starter, obviously someone who is competitive. When you talk about making money off of fundraising, well, I'm a business owner. I don't make any money. unless I go out and I find a team that needs to utilize my service and I do really well by them and help them perform. I'm simply sharing in the revenue. That's it. I'm not charging these programs anything up front.
Mm,
That's an important element. And I think you have to be coachable because this is a very it's not a unique concept. I mean, I think even as you said, I remember growing up, we fundraised when I played sports. Most people have engaged with fundraising if they were involved in athletics or activities. But really, what is very unique is people truly don't understand how it works. And I think that's why we're so incredibly important in a school system or in a youth setting. And so you have to be coachable. You've got to be willing to reach out to somebody like me and say, hey, I've done this today. Here's what I did really well. Here's where I fouled up a little bit. What can I do to improve tomorrow? And we're going to be right there by your side. What's unique about us is everyone in our leadership group, including Mike Bahoon, our founder, we go out every day and we run fundraisers. We go out and we sign teams. So we're actually feet to the pavement in territories just like our owners are.
yeah, that's amazing. So just to sum it up real quick, you're looking for someone who is organized, someone who's competitive, and someone who's gonna go out and push themselves. You said it's a home based business, uh, to actually do these things. I imagine a little bit of like outgoing because you have to
Yes.
just walk up to people and talk to them, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I always like to put it, you've never met a stranger, right? You could talk to anybody. You enjoy talking to people. And that's really, truly what this is about is developing a relationship. And what I would always tell candidates when I was speaking to them in terms of the franchise development role is put yourself in the role of the activities director or the coach. The number one factor that one of those individuals is going to use to determine whether or not they want to do business with you is, do they feel comfortable putting you in front of their kids? And do they feel um, that their coaching staff is going to buy into you as a professional and take on the coaching that you're providing? So yes, somebody who doesn't know a stranger, somebody who loves athletics or maybe has played or coached in the past, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have done that. But generally, if you enjoy being around youth or athletics or what have you, then you're going to um, be a pretty good fit if you carry those other qualities as well.
okay, so we find a great person, they go through the franchise discovery process, right? They learn everything they need to know. They speak to owners. They decide to join the franchise. What is their training and launch going to look like?
Yeah. So they will go through traditionally a week where the first 2 days are more classroom based training. They can either go to Arizona when we offer it in person, that's where our home base office is, or they could do it remotely where we're going to teach them concepts. The concepts like what we call action selling. So that is the non-manipulative approach or the conversational process that we utilize when we get in front of a coach to be able to narrow down, are we a good fit for each other? We're going to teach them concepts called the Blitz system, which is essentially what happens in the process from the moment I meet a coach to me actually executing and finalizing a fundraiser. So the first 2 days are essentially identifying the foundation of those elements. And then the rest of the week, traditionally Wednesday, Thursday, they're going to go into their territory and they're going to start to get their feet wet with being in schools and starting to meet people and have those conversations. And then from that point, it's what we call immersive training. So they are going to traditionally go out into their territory from that point moving forward. And that is when their FBC or their franchise business coach, like myself, will take over and we're providing um, I hate to say live, but more autonomous learning where on a day-to-day basis, we're having conversations, we're providing training to them on a weekly basis. Long story short, we're a bunch of coaches. So the training never stops around here. We do weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannual training. So it never really ends. But in terms of the traditional process to get onboarded, they're spending about a week learning concepts and then they're practicing those concepts live from there.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, it sounds like it's pretty simple, and it's more about having someone there to get you out and over the coming that initial fear of
That's right.
yeah. Okay, and then the other thing is that I've seen franchises, um, advertising for the franchise business coach position, and it's like, they have coaches who are not from the franchise. And so I think it's so much more powerful when the coach has lived it and they're like, "Oh man, the third athletic director told me to pound sand." And you're like, "Oh yeah, I once had a day where 6 of them told me that." Like,
That's right.
um, the coaching I think is just better when it's like that.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I actually am able to provide, live training to the individuals that I work with specifically. Like I can zoom them in on fundraisers that I'm running live. I've had all of my franchisees come into Denver and they've actually sat in the car with me and gone and visited schools for a day,
Oh,
or I've
cool.
gone out with them and visited schools. There's certain franchisees where when they run their first fundraisers, I'm able to go out and visit them and be present with them. I think that's so incredibly important. And yes, we have lived in this world for many, many years. So we're the first line of defense. And we're also, part of the executive leadership team in some form or fashion where they can just get answers from us right when they need them and they don't have to go through a chain of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Okay. And so they've launched, they've gone through training. Can you talk about what the day to day looks like, maybe that first year or two? And I imagine as you grow, your day is going to look different once you have a staff underneath you. So kind of like, what does it look like when you start? And what does that growth process look like?
Yeah. So if you're an owner operator, essentially what you're doing is your objective Monday through Thursday is to go out into schools and visit schools. So you're going to have what we call a call plan. So you're going to have a territory that is unique to you. You're going to have a set amount of schools within that territory. Now, keep in mind, we can work anything from an elementary school all the way up to a junior college or a college. 90% of the time, our main focus is going to be high school athletics and activities, and we're going to branch out from there. Okay. So maybe the basketball coach is married to the local elementary school principal, and you get a referral and you go there. So I'm essentially going to identify in what we call grids where I'm spending my time each day. And that's just so that I'm not driving all over Timbuktu wasting my gas. So I've got about 5 high schools a day that I'm going to plan to go visit. My objective in each of those schools is to traditionally speak to about 3 to 4 different coaches or activities directors about their program with the ultimate objective of signing them up for a fundraiser. Okay. Now, we do work about 60 to 180 days in advance. And so, if you can imagine right now, I'm signing fall sports. So, that would be the football teams, the volleyball teams, the softball teams here in Colorado. And so, as I'm signing up those teams, I am then, transitioning into what we call that blitz system where I'm starting to prepare those coaches. So initially, it's all just drumming up business. I'm creating a pipeline. I'm
Mhm.
visiting schools in a repetitive fashion and seeking out as many individuals within a school as I can. There can be 12 to 15 opportunities in one school alone. Yes, your day does start to look a little bit different as you generate business. So, right now, we're in what we call a blitz season, meaning this is a season in March where most high school sports teams are kicking off their season. So, in the very beginning of a sports team season, that's when they're going to fundraise. Once they've made cuts right before they start competing, there's usually a week or two in between. I'm fundraising right in between that spot.
Mhm.
And so now my day, I'm going and I'm visiting schools and I'm signing sports for the fall. But in the evenings, I might be during practice hours running my spring teams.
Oh, I
And
see.
then I'm doing a little bit of that juggling, right? Now, as you can imagine, the longer that you're in the business and because of a traditionally higher residual rate, my signing becomes a little bit less and less, right? My referrals increase, my teams start to incrementally improve in performance. So my signing decreases a little bit. And then I'm just more or less always juggling. Now, if you're someone who has multi units and you have sales reps, you may choose to operate one territory and maybe you've got sales reps in the others. And so part of your day or your week may be inspecting what you inspect with those sales reps. You might be riding with them to schools. You might be shadowing them on a fundraiser. They might be shadowing you, so on and so forth. So, majority of the time in the beginning is prospecting. Then it turns a little bit more into account management and development of skill set onto actually running the sales at an extremely highly successful level because that's when you're starting to increase your earnings.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I love like the snowball effect. If I get a 90% residual and I can sign 10 people up this year and 10 people up next year, well, it's actually 19 people that I have. And I can see that over time just becoming huge. So that's very
Right.
cool. Okay. Alrighty. And then I guess is there any other employees besides the sales rep if you hire one, or is it kind of like a one man show?
Yeah, so we actually only work we traditionally don't bring on any employees whatsoever, outside of those 1099 contractors. The only other option that you would have is, once if you're a multi-unit owner or you do start to do a significant amount of business, we have a gentleman that runs over 200 fundraisers a year. You might choose to bring on some sort of an administrative assistant. Maybe they help you with your admin using the technology, taking some of that off your plate. Or when we talk about, the football cards that we sell with our football teams, maybe they assist you with getting some of those merchants or what have you. But outside of a sales rep, the only other individual that you would ever really partake in, or maybe like a virtual assistant, would be just an admin role.
Okay. Um, and so when I hear that, first thing I think is like, well, how am I going to go on vacation? If I want to take 2 weeks off, is this like a seasonal business and you're not doing much over the summer and that's kind of your off time? Like, or are these
Yeah.
guys just running, 365 until they leave the business?
So it's seasonal for sure. So traditionally you're going to have about 4 seasons throughout the year that you are running high school sports. You're running your spring in March, your late spring April, May, your fall in August, and your winter in November. So the blitz seasons typically last for about 2 weeks out of that month because you can run multiple fundraisers in a day. Now, if I wanted to go run a bunch of bands in June, I absolutely could. That's when band runs in the summer. They do their band camps. If I decide that I want to take my kids to Mexico for a week in June, then I just wouldn't sign bands in June, or I wouldn't sign as many bands or what have you. You have complete autonomy over your schedule, but
Mm,
where your meat and potato is coming from, is those 4 sports seasons where you're making a significant amount of revenue. But again, there's JROTCs that I do a lot of business with in January.
mm,
So there are capabilities or possibilities for you to run sales all year. If you're running 200, 250 fundraisers a year, yeah, you're gonna be pretty busy, right? But this business could easily be $1 million generating revenue business with an average fundraiser grossing about $10,000. You run 100 of them in a year, that's only 25 a quarter.
yeah.
So
So
there is plenty of time there for you to have a balance. We are essentially a lifestyle business built around schools. That's all it is.
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, that's very cool. And that's, I mean, that's kind of, we own a dance franchise, so it's very much around the same thing. Like we slow down the summer. There's a week in Christmas where, or two
That's
weeks where
right.
like we don't do anything. So we
That's
just
right.
plan our vacations around that same schedule. So
Yep. You got it.
yep. Okay. Cool. And then does this work? If I'm thinking about it, I'm looking around. You mentioned you're in Denver. Typically, that's a high cost of living. It's kind of a well off city. Does it have to work in those cities, or does it work well in secondary cities or tertiary cities as well?
Well, you have to think that majority of the time your business 90% of the time is going to be public school, right? And so schools need money everywhere across the United States. Traditionally, every territory for the most part will have a mixture of both inner city, rural, and suburban schools. I've got a mixture of all three. The number one factor that really truly determines whether or not a sale is going to be successful is the coach out of all else.
Mm,
I have sales that I've expected to run in suburban Parker, Colorado that didn't turn out as well as, me driving out to the boondocks in Elizabeth, Colorado and running a 40-man, baseball program with a bunch of cows outside. You just it's the coach dynamic, and it's also the community support and involvement that makes a big difference. But yes, schools need money everywhere in the United States. I don't think I've ever been told that a school didn't need money, except maybe a couple private Christian schools in my area that the kids are driving G-Wagons, right? So, anywhere we wouldn't essentially offer a territory if we didn't feel that there was enough high schools or enough student population and ability to be successful.
okay, very cool. No, I mean I see that. Like, if there's anything that can bring a community together, it's sports.
Right.
Um, okay. And then um, let's talk about the market a little bit. We kind of got into it with that, but do you have competitors? Is it fragmented? Like, what does the landscape look like?
It's pretty fragmented. We have a few competitors out there, none of which that offer the same type of service that we do. They're more commodity based, technology based, where they're more or less just renting out their technology to the coach, and there isn't necessarily service there or dynamic there to help a team perform at a higher level. We typically see on average our competitors are grossing about $250 per athlete. Traditionally, within Fundraising University, we see an average of over $600 per athlete.
Oh,
I personally average $1,076 per athlete. So even if a competitor were to walk into one of my schools and say, "Hey, come work with me," the numbers wouldn't even jive, even if they gave them a higher percentage. There's just nobody like the exceptionally trained individuals within Fundraising University. I hate to sound like that or say that, but it's the truth. That's what really makes us different. So there are a few companies out there, but truthfully, through the years I've been in this business, the only ones I've really seen withstand have been like your chocolate bar sales. You sell them for a buck and you get 50 cents. Well, that's a lot of chocolate bars you got to sell in order to make any money. Or you've got a technologically based fundraiser where they just run it for a month and a half and send emails to people, and there's no personal engagement with the kids. Yeah, sure, you could consider it competitor, but the results just don't match what we do based on our level of service.
yeah. And I imagine, if I was a coach or a parent of kids at that age, I'd want to know that like this is being run a little more personally, I guess. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
And so pretty much all of your customer acquisition is through just going into the school, like saying, "Hey, can I
That's
talk to
right.
the sports director?"
That's right. We go in, we seek out the coach first because the coach is the matriarch or the patriarch of the program. They're the individual that's standing there with us to, engage with, mentor, motivate, hold accountable all the kids. So we want to speak to them first. In some cases, I have had teams that have performed extremely well, and I've been introduced to an athletic director. And the athletic director will call me and say, "Hey, come down. I want you to meet every single coach I have in this building. Can you do that for everybody?" And then I've ended up with school wide deals. But
Oh,
traditionally, I am the marketing. I am the person walking into the school. I don't leave flyers. I don't send emails. I don't send text messages. We're not dealing with C-level executives. We're dealing with busy individuals that are in classrooms in front of kids all day. They don't have time for that. They want someone to approach them.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of people see that as like intimidating. Because we do the same thing for our business. Because we sell dance to the schools, like in the
Yes.
schools, and it's nice because we have complete control over that, right? And so like or really, as my wife was doing this, just driving around, and we know if she talks to 15 schools, we're gonna get 3 signups that day or whatever. So
Right.
it's just something it's really easy to model and really easy to just um to control. 'Cause sometimes it feels like Facebook is like you never know what's gonna happen when you throw money on Facebook. So I do like these types of
Well,
businesses.
and it's a lot easier to say no to someone via text or email. You know what I mean? Or, they forget about you when you give them a flyer. There's
Mhm.
nothing like, the personal interaction. We can get as technologically advanced in this world as we want, but there's just nothing like walking up to somebody and shaking their hand and having a relationship developed with them, where there's trust and, um, strength between two people. And, we don't find every single coach is the right fit for us, or vice versa. We don't need all of them. We just need some of them. I need 100
Yeah.
a year. And so, I've got 20 some schools in my territory and 12 to 15 opportunities in each school. And that doesn't include middle schools, elementaries, youth, travel. So that's pretty easy to me. But yes, I can control 5 schools a day. I talk to 4 people. Most likely I'm signing at least one.
Yeah. Yep. That's great. Um, okay. And then you also get to talk about sports, which is nice.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Uh, okay, very cool. Very cool. Can you talk about the biggest challenges that you've faced as a franchisee?
I would say the biggest challenge that I faced as a franchisee initially was feeling like I didn't have the right to walk up to some of the what I would call like the big boy coaches, right? The big state champ football coaches or the baseball coaches, the big programs. Thought, oh, you need some more experience running teams before you walk up to this guy and talk to him about his $150,000 sale. And I learned very quickly that that's really truly not the case. I'll be completely transparent. I know nothing about sports, really, even to this day, outside of volleyball. I played volleyball. My girls play volleyball. Um, my son played baseball. I know what a home run is. I know what a touchdown is. But aside from that, like I'm not sitting at the Broncos stadium watching a game. In fact, I've been here since 2007 and I've never watched a game in the Broncos stadium. So, um, don't allow yourself to think that you have to arrive before you can approach someone, and don't think that you have to be an expert in sales or be an expert in sports or athletics to make it somewhere. You're really truly in what we do in this business. We're coaching coaches. If you're great at developing relationships and building trust with people, we're going to teach you everything else. So for me, that was my biggest challenge. And I'll never forget the first fundraiser I ever left. We made over $7,000 in an hour in Pueblo, Colorado, selling cookie dough. And I remember I called my brother-in-law and I said, "Oh my gosh, I think I just did a good job." And he goes, "Well, I would say so. You sold $7,000 worth of cookie dough." And I thought, I think I might be onto something. And so we went from there. And now I have football teams that make anywhere between 100 and 120,000 in 7 days.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool what you can do in this business. But don't let that be a challenge. Don't let my challenge be your challenge. It's definitely not necessary.
Yeah. I mean, even, taking a step back, it's like a lot of franchise owners are just so timid and they're like, oh, I've never done this before. I'm not from this. But it's, hey, just go out there and do what the
Start that
franchise
stops
tells you
most
to do.
people. Yep.
Yeah. 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 Me and my wife don't know how to dance. We get laughed at when we go to parties, but
Yep.
we did what the
I was
franchise told
never in
us.
cheer, I never cheered, nor did my girls, but hey, I know those cheer teams, a little bit of a different dynamic, but I learned how to work with them real quick and have seen a lot of success. I mean, I think I told you before, Josh, we've had dance studios make $30,000 in 7 days.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Those kids now have everything they need. I mean, there's just nothing better than that.
Yeah, yeah. So would you say, that's the best part is just kind of being able to help these programs? Like, what's your favorite part of the business?
I think the best part of the business is when you have a coach, and I'll give you a real life story. I just had a coach that um, last year made $17,000, and it was a pretty good sale, not where it needed to be. Um, but when I met with him this year, I said, with the amount of kids you have and what you're looking to buy, like you need to make 30,000. We'd never make 30,000. There's no way. This is Liberty, Colorado, or we're in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're never going to make that kind of money. And they made 32,000, over 32,000 in a week. And
Wow.
the best part is the coach calling you and going, "Oh my gosh, is this real? Like, is this really happening?" And you see them get so excited, and just the level of appreciation. Or when you walk in a room and you have kids that are excited to see you and coaches that are excited to see you and they clap for you. And "Oh, there's Lindsay in the grocery store. She does our fundraising," and they introduce you to their parents. I mean, that's the best part of this business. You're part of your community, which is really cool.
Yeah, yeah, it is really cool. Okay. And then what about the people who don't do well, right? Where when franchisees don't do well, what's the
Yeah.
cause of that?
It starts with the start that stops most people, right? It's the individuals traditionally that are not going out into schools on a daily basis. That's where we have found the disease to be. We see a lot of symptoms, but when you get down to the actual diagnosing of the disease, it's because they're not generating enough activity. Or let's say, for example, I'm just going to work this type of student base. I'm just going to work with youth groups. Well, you're essentially, when you're working with a youth group, you might be pulling from the pool of high school kids and multiple high schools around you. And so now you've got high schools competing with youth groups, and there's different dynamics in youth groups than there are in high school teams. And that's why we focus majority of our time on high school teams. It's for a reason. So you've got to go out and you've got to generate the activity, and you have to be coachable. You
Mm,
have to understand that you are going to be uncomfortable for a little bit. It's just natural. If I went and owned a gym franchise, I'd be uncomfortable in the beginning too. I don't know how to do that, right? Um, so that would be number one for me. I've also seen some ancillary things like spouse, isn't supportive. Traditionally, through the development process, you figure that out, right? Um, or we've had some catastrophes, we've had some major illnesses and deaths in families and things of that nature, our fair share of them with franchisees. But really, truly, it's traditionally controlled by the individual, just not taking action.
Okay. And then do you have a like of the ones who are just crushing it, do they have a common background? Like are they coming from sales? Are they coming from certain industries? Like or is it a little smattering of everything?
You know what? It's actually a little spattering of everything. The gentleman who does about 200 fundraisers a year, he actually was a college level instructor
Oh,
and played baseball while he was growing up and through college. But he was a college professor. We had another gal; she was a teacher in a high school that did over $1 million in her first year. She kept gloating about the fact that she out earned her attorney husband the first year in business. She was a lot of fun to talk to that first year. She's obviously very excited about that. Um, we've had individuals that have come in from sales, yes, that have done extremely well, but different types of sales, pharmaceutical sales. Same concept, the cold calling aspect. I had a little bit of a background in sales, but I was educational sales. My background is criminology and law, so
mm,
nowhere near sales. So really truly I think it's a mixture of different types of people, but we all have certain qualities about us. I think it's just in the fact that we can engage with people very well and develop relationships, bottom line.
yeah. Very cool. Okay. And then can you tell us about the future, right? Like what's the plan for Franchising University as you guys move forward?
Yeah, I think we'd love to get to a point where, we get to about 200 units sold. We'd love to see as many of our current owners develop into multi-unit owners as possible and bring on successful sales reps. But ultimately, I'd say that's our biggest goal. We want to keep raising money for schools. We've raised over $200 million for schools. We're very, very, very proud of that. We want to continue giving back. But ultimately, we want to build a brand where our owners are it's our community. We're all creating this success for each other that eventually when we retire or we sell or whatever we do, I mean, we're all successful with that. So we want to find great people that love what we're doing and want to be a part of what we're doing. That's our biggest our biggest concern.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And so let's wrap it up with any advice that you have to people who are currently looking at franchises or even just considering whether they should own a franchise.
Yeah, I think if you're someone that maybe hasn't got a lot of ownership experience, business ownership experience, that's okay. I never had either. I mean, I own another business as well that is not a franchise that I started from the ground up. Franchising is phenomenal because you walk into a playbook. You walk into um, a group of individuals that know how to be successful, and that's where the self starter and the organization and the coachability comes in. So take the chance. Like, I mean, I remember years of being in a corporate environment where it was push, pull, drag. I felt like no matter what I did, I made the same amount of money. I had to ask my boss to leave 10 minutes early or request a vacation day. And just your self worth, I felt personally, I just didn't really feel great about myself. And yeah, it's scary to have to bet on yourself. But I look back now and I think, wow, I couldn't imagine working for someone else. I couldn't imagine um, having to ask if I could take my kid to a dentist appointment. You know what I mean? I 110% am comfortable relying and counting on myself. And I know my business very well. If you're willing to put in the sweat equity to a business and you find a business that you're extremely passionate about, you're not going to fail. You should not ever question whether or not you should believe in yourself. So that's probably my biggest piece of advice for people is just take the leap. Life is short. Don't stick with something that doesn't make you happy to get up and do it every single day. And everything, regardless of what you do, is hard. You
Mhm.
just have to pick your hard. That's all.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Thank you, Lindsay.
Sure.
Um, okay, so guys, that's it. Thank you so much. I'm Josh Emerson with Tracer Franchising. If you want help finding matches, I work with hundreds of franchises and maybe Franchising University is a great match for you. Maybe there's some other ones. Or just doing the research and finding funding, attorneys, and asking the right questions, head over to tracerfranchising.com and reach out. And I'd love to talk to you sometime soon. Thanks again, Lindsay. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Of course. Bye bye.